Well, the European Union has done its first safety periodic review on COVID vaccines, and it's stunning data to say the least. And the only reason we know about it is through a Freedom of Information Act request. We actually get this data. Investigative journalist Sonia Elijah has just written a new report for the Children's Health Defense Europe on this damning data. And this is just stunning. And Sonia joins us now. Welcome back to the show, Sonia. Good to see you.
Thank you, Clayton, for having me back on.
So tell us, when you got your hands on this data, you started combing through it. What stood out to you immediately?
Yes, so this was the EU's first ever periodic safety update report. So it is a very important document. It's a pharmacovigilance document, and it's used to evaluate the risk benefit balance of the medical product. So it was just under 300 pages. And it covered a 6 month period from December 2020 to June 2021, and it just had some really alarming data in it, and it did remind me of previous documents that I have gone through. I've gone through extensively the court ordered the release of the Pfizer documents, and I've written 5 in-depth reports for Trial Site News on what I found there. So there were some similarities. So just to give a quick overview, you've got over 300,000 case reports. A case represents an individual. And of those case reports, it contained over 1 million adverse events. So you're looking on average, one individual suffering from at least 3 to 4 adverse events.
I was going to say
Um,
the numbers were not making sense to me. 300,000 yet over a. So each person was having multiple adverse events.
Multiple, and that was a similar finding I found in the Pfizer's prepared document for the FDA, their cumulative analysis report on adverse events, which I analyzed well over a year ago. So that was similar. You have, now this is very important, you have 3 times more cases reported for women than men. And this speaks to a gender specific harms. And that was a similar finding, exactly 3 times more women affected by adverse events than men. You had the highest number of reported cases in the younger age groups, not in the elderly that you would expect. The 31 to 50-year age group had the highest case reports for that age group. And a third of those, third of all the total case reports were classified as serious, which is also alarming. And you had just under half of those classified of the case reports, they had the outcomes classified as unknown or unresolved, which is
So
really stunning.
there's a lot of things to
Uh,
unpack here. Yeah, there's a
I
lot
mean,
of pieces to
go on. There's lots.
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
wanted to mention the deaths. So we've got over 5,000 deaths,
wow.
and you have 84% of the case reports had no history of comorbidity, which means they had no underlying health issues,
Mhm.
which
80,
is very alarming.
84.
84% of case reports, these are individuals, 84% of all the individuals had no history of comorbidities, meaning they were not suffering from any other underlying health issues.
So of that 300,000, 84% of these people
Yeah.
didn't have diabetes, didn't have other issues. These were specific, and are they coming out and saying specifically that this is as a result of the vaccines? The reason they're having these adverse events, are they coming out and being explicit about that? Or are they still dancing around this?
Of course not, Clayton. They never say it's related to the vaccine. They come out with the conclusion that the benefit risk profile of this product remains favorable. And I'm just going to unpack this a little bit more
Favorable.
for your audience.
So
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
remains
if I
favorable.
told this, if I literally my 6-year-old is learning math, and if I told her that you have 300,000 people and they have multiple adverse events, what would you say, honey? Would you say that this the risk benefit analysis of this makes sense, that we should go forward and continue to give this to people? My 6-year-old would say, no, daddy, that sounds like it's bad. I mean, and the EU, looking at this data, decided to go forward with it.
Yeah, well, your 6-year-old has more wisdom than the European Medicines Agency. And I wanted to mention, we're talking about these numbers. You have to factor in the magnitude of underreporting that goes on. So there was a study done by Harvard which said literally 1 to 10%, only 1 to 10% of adverse events ever get reported. And also there was a systematic review done by Hazel et al., which stated that there was evidence of significant widespread underreporting of adverse events to spontaneous reporting systems. So you've got to factor that in. So
Right.
even though we're thinking, wow, these numbers are really high, they are far higher in reality. Okay. And going back to the younger age groups of comorbidity with no comorbidities. So for the under 17s who died, we had 22 individuals with fatal outcomes, and they had no comorbidities. Only one died who had a comorbidity, and that was seen across all the age groups, all the younger age groups. It only stopped around 65 plus, and then you see those with comorbidities overtaking those without. Okay. You had them they did review the clinical trial data for the 12 to 15-year age group. This is the adolescent trial. And this is really damning because I interviewed Maddie de Grey's mother, Stephanie. Maddie was in that adolescent trial. She was age 12 at the time. And we know she was, left in a wheelchair. She was reliant on a feeding tube. They put down her adverse event as abdominal pain. And in this EU report, the preferred term in the relevant cases of is abdominal pain. They use that term again. And this has been a complete cover-up of the Maddie de Grey case here. So it's really, really damning. They also talk about lots, the bad lots. So you have a table where you have the lot number and then the associated number of cases reported to do with that lot number. So for example, you've got EL1485 lot number, and you have over 16,000 cases reported to that lot number. And I don't know if you're aware, but I have done an extensive analysis of the elite European Medicine Agency emails and Pfizer reports, which discuss this big difference in the RNA integrity levels. So we know there were quality issues relating to the different batches, the different lots. Yet this report states overall there were no related quality issues identified. They have the audacity to say that.
Yeah, I mean, in your reporting, of course, we covered since the last time you were on the show, we outlined the variations and the blots and how there's total inconsistency in these vaccines, unlike other vaccines where we see consistency across the board. Here, we're seeing variations all over the place. I have a bunch of questions. I just want this is unbelievable. I want to specifically target first. You talk about the VAERS, the adverse event reporting system in the United States. In the EU, so we know that these numbers are really, really low in the United States. The reporting, the amount of paperwork that's required for doctors and those individuals to fill out in order to even be placed into the VAERS system is very, very low. Is it the same for the European Union?
Yes, it's the same. I mean, but also this report, it's worldwide. It includes US cases. It's not just EU. It's worldwide. So that's why it's a very damning report. And yes, it is underreported. I mean that's a fact. I also wanted to discuss menstrual disorders because they flagged that. Now they stated that that a number of queries had been received about menstrual disorders, especially prolonged bleeding, and this merits investigation. So you have them, this is the EMA. So they want the marketing authorization holder, which is BioNTech, to further investigate this. So supposedly they did an evaluation of these menstrual disorder cases and put it in an appendix. But it wasn't released. So all the appendix, so there was this report, and you have in the index all the appendices listed. I've only received the report. All the other evaluation reports were not received, so I don't know what was discussed. But the conclusion, and this is really dismissive and quite offensive, because they state these menstrual disorders are likely to be associated with psychological distress and anxiety related to the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
So,
So, so all of you guys, I mean, this is unbelievable. So, ladies, you're just so stressed out that this is
yeah,
why you're having an issue. It has nothing to do with the vaccine. I mean, we covered this story in the early days. Once we started getting data, I was getting viewers telling us that their wives were having these issues. We covered it on the show. There were a number of reports coming in, and we covered it on the show. We were banned for it. YouTube blocked us and banned us for covering that story. We did hear from, I mean, dozens upon dozens of men, husbands who said, "Thank you for doing the story because my wife has been having this issue. She thought she was going crazy because she's experiencing this. She thought she was alone in this." But this data shows us that they knew back then that this was a major issue.
they knew back then, and also we had a systematic review was done just it last summer actually, and in that systematic review they looked at 14 studies, and over 78,000 females, vaccinated females, at 52%, so more than half, a significant number, just more than half, experienced menstrual abnormalities. So, you know, this is a real issue, and they've just sort of glossed it over by saying, "Oh, it's stress, or it's dietary changes, or
Yeah,
it's just," I think, quite offensive.
it's insulting.
Um,
Can I
yeah,
go back
very
to the? I
insulting.
want to go back to the adverse events thing if we can for
Yes.
the number of adverse events.
Yeah,
We've had
sure.
Dr. Peter McCullough on the show and Dr. Asim Mayorta specifically talking about the number of adverse events that you would need to say, "Hey, we're going to pull this off the shelves." Would you say that these number of adverse events in given this data would have been sufficient under normal circumstances for them to have pulled this off the shelves?
Absolutely, 100%.
And what is the normal range of adverse events where a medication would be pulled off the shelf?
Well, we know, I mean, for example, I think this was to do with the swine flu vaccine, and I think there were only like a few deaths as a result, and they completely pulled that. So
So
we know,
in one
yeah,
lot, we have what was it?
60,000. There weren't
16,000.
deaths, there were 60,000 cases of people suffering from adverse events, and that included death. So now I looked. So there's a website called howbadismybatch.com. So that number, that lot number I stated earlier, I looked at that. This is the EL1484 number, and connected to that. So I put that in. I went to that website, put in that lot number. This is me. I mean, and the European Medicines Agency is obviously not capable of doing this. I don't know why. And I was able to find the lethality rate, which was over 2%, 2.5% of people who died who had a vaccine from that lot, and over 15% of severe adverse events were reported from that lot number.
It's really
So
it's really disgusting. And of course, they knew about this since with this data, from December of 2020 all the way
they
into
knew
the
about that.
yeah,
Yes,
they knew about
exactly.
this.
And they knew, and then they also, there's the section on deaths. I can just very briefly an overview of that. So you had the number one cause of death. So we know over 5,000 people died, and the number one cause of death was actually it's quite funny. They put death as number one cause of death. Then it's COVID-19, which is
Oh,
very ironic because we
right.
know that the vaccine was touted, this is to prevent you dying from COVID-19. And what's very interesting, they have sudden death, and you only have to look even in just mainstream media, like sudden death, all these healthy people that succumb to sudden death. That's been going on for quite some time, so that is listed as one of the number one causes of death. And also, only 189 cases out of the over 5,000, autopsy reports were done only for 189 of those cases, so very few. And of those 189, pulmonary embolism was the number one cause, And it's interesting because just in that summer, the July 2021, so just the following year, the US, the FDA, they linked four new adverse events to the Pfizer vaccine. And one of those was the pulmonary embolism. So
Unbelievable. I mean,
just,
I have a few more questions and I'll get you out of here on this, Sonia, because we could talk for an hour on this. The female to male ratio, the gender specific problem of this,
yes,
do we know what
yes.
sorts of adverse events the women were having beyond? I think we talked about the menstrual issues. Did they rise to the level of serious? Now, I know you talked about, was it a third of all cases rose to the level of serious? First of all, what does it mean to have a serious adverse event? Is death included in the serious, or is death another category?
Yes.
Okay,
I believe death would be a serious, and then the outcome would be death. But serious could be like hospitalization. Um, I guess it impacting your day to day,
yeah.
sort of
And so,
factors like
and then was there something specific with women in these cases where we saw 30% more among women? Do we know, and beyond just the menstrual issue, of course, which is horrible enough, were there other issues that women were experiencing differently than men? Does the data show us that?
well it as I need to look at it again. Obviously it's a lot of it's very dense with data, so
Right.
there is and we know that women were three times more affected, but it was from strokes, cardiac arrest. I mean, it was all the sort of similar. Oh, anaphylaxis, that came up high for women,
Hmm.
and in issues like that. So we were just why. I mean, it's why women being more effective. This is the question. This is the question that doctors and scientists need to be asking. I mean, I'm an investigative journalist. I don't have a scientific background or medical background. I'm just literally going through the data here.
And for all of us to be able to sit back and say, how could you have approved this? Knowing what was happening, seeing the data, how could you have allowed this to continue? Here we are in 2023 and we still have vaccine mandates. I mean, we have presidents of countries still pushing for vaccine mandates. And it's unbelievable to me that even up until just recently, we had military vaccine mandates. And the data is coming in on that side as well. And that is actually a question I have to get you out of here: is are military numbers associated with this? Do we know, is that added into the VERIS system and into this reporting, or is that a whole separate category for the members of the military that have been forced to take this?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just the clinical trial data and the post authorization, post marketing data in this. I don't think it doesn't mention that military are included.
Hmm. Unbelievable. Is there anything that we missed? Because I have a lot more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time here. Anything else that I mean, bottom line this for us, Sonia. I mean, this is continuing. These people, the EU, the United States, they continue to push this on people despite having this data. They had this internal data, and the only reason we learn about it is through Freedom of Information Act requests.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's just shocking that they can not, rather than they should be pulling it or doing an abrupt U turn, they're promoting it for pregnant women. For example, there was some pregnancy outcomes I looked at just in the reporting period. And of the 26, this is the pregnancy outcomes, and 26, you've got 26 pregnancy outcomes reported in that 6 month period, and 15 of those was spontaneous abortion, miscarriage, right? And then there were 5 live births, but they had congenital abnormalities. So it's just really, and we know that they really push this on pregnant. Well, they still are pushing it on pregnant women back from the spring of 2021. So it's just really, and then obviously we know they've authorized to the youngest age groups down to 6 months of age.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a crime against humanity, is what it is. And we will continue to follow the story. And I want to link up your latest report on the Children's Health Defense. We'll have that linked up in the show description so people can go read your latest report on this. And just thank you for your amazing journalism on this, Sonia. We really appreciate you joining us as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.